Symbols speak volumes, and that whole thing of this guy who's talking in riddles and sending codes.
Does that look like a gun sign?
It's freaky.
You can literally say people were destroyed by this case.
The murders terrified me.
They've gone overboard to make it as accurate as possible.
It was grueling in terms of the mindset you have to be in.
It's a true story, and they don't catch the guy.
I do not know who the Zodiac was.
My movie is not about aggrandizing a mass murderer.
All I wanted to do was put all the facts out there, and people would see this, and they would solve the case.
This is the Zodiac speaking.
Okay, lock it there, Cam. Okay, push for that.
I knew about the murders and I knew about the letters. I grew up in the Bay Area during this period of time. He was, a boogeyman for so long. And then when they stopped talking about him or stopped writing about him or stopped mentioning him, all of a sudden it was like it had never happened. I do profoundly remember when my family moved away from the Bay Area, looking out the back window of my parents' car as we drove away from our house and thinking, did they ever catch that Zodiac guy?
Whoa.
Murder cases are primarily easy to solve because there's always some connection with the victims. In this case here, we never were able to find a connection with the victims. It seemed like it was just random. Two kids out in Lover's Lane doing whatever you do on Lover's Lane, and a man came up and shot him. Berryessa, two kids sitting out on a picnic blanket, having a nice picnic, a man comes up and stabs them. San Francisco, Paul Stein driving his cab, drives him to Washington Cherry Street, tells him to park and shoots him. And then letters started coming in to the newspaper and police departments describing the killing and that the killer was a person named the Zodiac.
If you do not print this cipher by the afternoon of Fry, F-R-Y, 1st of August 69, we'll go on a kill rampage Friday night.
It became probably the biggest thing I saw in my whole law enforcement career.
What do you say, 20 bucks, whoever cracks the psycho's name?
He won't keep his name.
There is something about a case where the guy says, my name is, and he gives it to you in cipher. Here's a map, here's where I live, here's what I'm going to do next, try and stop me. And I don't think at that time, which was a very dark time for the country anyway, that I'd ever seen such intensity and terror, focus in one spot.
It's great.
I'm not interested in exploiting this, I'm not Geraldo. Part of the reason people are going to go see this movie is because people got killed. And that's unfortunate, that's dramatic. But that's not what my movie's about. My movie is not about aggrandizing a mass murderer.
Okay, that scene's complete.
I don't want to see a guy at home sharpening his knives. I'm not interested in that character. I'm interested in all the ancillary people who were kind of left in the wake and how they picked up and moved on when there was no satisfaction. Graysmith's presence in this room is only because it's incumbent upon the editorial cartoonist to be part of the discussion of what the politics of the paper are, where the paper is leaning. But he's obviously, the kid who has no business being there. So whenever he pipes up, it's like, don't you have something to do? Like,
You come in under the excuse of, oh, here, I got my thing.
right.
It's finished.
And come to this side and just sort of slide it across the side.
That side?
I think this side right here.
Later.
The way I became involved in the case is pretty simple. I have always thought of a political cartoon where if I see legislation or a corrupt politician, you put together a visual picture, symbols, and you call attention to this, and you create a reaction within the physical world. I thought to myself, since none of these counties were sharing, all the police departments wanted to solve this, none of the information was going back and forth, that if I could go out there and gather this as a book that served as a political cartoon, and in a sense that if I couldn't find it, that all the information was there, and so through the symbols, very similar to what the killer used, my own symbols as a cartoonist, the public would catch this guy. They would have all the pieces.
At first, I didn't know anything about the story. I didn't know about Zodiac. I didn't know about Robert Graysmith. But I did know about David Fincher. There's a sense in his movies, an interesting numbness in them. And I think that comes from him. There's something in him. And I think his process brings that out, too. The way he does it forces you into the sort of state. And within that state is a David Fincher movie. Most Dangerous Game.
Most dangerous.
We shot a 110-day schedule where you're talking most of the time, and it's a story about finding a serial killer.
Who's that?
That's Count Zaroff.
Zaroff? With a Z?
It was grueling in terms of the mindset you have to be in. And particularly with David, he does lots of takes, you know.
Chloe?
Well, I never had to do 60 to 80 takes at a time. Not only to fine-tune performance, but also technical things, camera movements, lighting, background, whatever it may be. David wanted everything to be just right, and everybody had to be at the top of their game and, you know, make sure every prop was reset in the exact place and the camera move had to be right. And, you know, he expects the best out of everyone on the crew, and I think you have to, you know, really step it up when you're around him and be really sharp.
Okay, good.
You know, he knows what he wants. It's sort of like working on Shakespeare, you know, you have to stay within the pentameter, you know, you have to stay within the rules, but within those rules, I think, are amazing discoveries. I grab the door, and then I turn around for that when he rejects me. I turn around to think. I'm like, oh yeah. Jack Molnax.
Stand by. Here we go.
I discovered that Robert Graysmith's obsession with the case had less to do, when you're working on it as an actor, it had less to do with me obsessing about the facts than why he found it so fun. Because I think that Robert found it actually fun. I think that's what's hard for people to understand, is that this man enjoyed searching for this person. Whereas a cop would have done it because it was his job, or a journalist would have done it as his job, he really had fun.
I guess I'm the kind of guy that doesn't like to give up. And once you get your teeth into a project, I like to stay with it. You know, Dave Toschi gets a case every 3 weeks, but I got one. And I'm going to give it my all, I mean, even if it takes 10 or 15 years.
I wanted to talk to you about Zodiac.
I want to talk about Zodiac. Trepidatious.
I think the presenting of that information shouldn't be so hesitant. I mean, I feel like
We got
it's
him.
exciting. It's Dave Toschi. This is Zodiac, you know?
That's true.
But then I also know that
It is the greatest thorn in his side.
I can't meet with you. Wait, what's the first
I can't
one?
have more meetings with you to discuss
Wait,
what
wait,
you...
I can't allow you to help. I can't allow you to help.
Can't allow you.
And I can't have more meetings with you to discuss what you might uncover.
People like Robert and Dave Toschi, they both want order and they both want a sense of purpose or a reason why things got out of control and chaotic and sad. But I think Dave Toschi was able at some point to make his peace with the fact that he wasn't going to find satisfaction. And he was able to kind of say, I gave it as much time as it was due. And I don't think Robert was capable of that.
I have been a cop for 25 years, murder police for 12. What do you do for a living?
You know what I do for
You're a cartoonist.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying Zodiac was my job. It's not yours.
I mean, I understand it. It's an American phenomenon for people to become obsessed with their work. You know, it's a very goal-oriented society. Plus, you have so many people's lives hanging on it.
Roll camera. Roll, action.
Him and his partner were handed one of the most sprawling ongoing investigations in America at the time. It ended up being almost in the history of unsolved crime investigations. And it all sort of fell on the shoulders of these two men.
It's your birthday.
Yep.
That's great. Happy birthday.
Thanks. Body or scene?
It's your birthday. I'll take the body.
I don't know what it is that draws people to be policemen. I've done enough ride-alongs with police doing research on Seven and working with homicide investigators to know that that's not a job I would do. That requires a kind of fortitude. Maybe for the Dave Toskis of the world, the puzzle is enough, or the promise of justice is enough.
Before we even started rehearsal, I asked immediately to be able to go up and meet Dave Toschi. This is it, the meetings of the mind.
Who's one of you?
I know.
And I went to 7-Eleven to get them.
Thank you. Sign my cracker?
Are you kidding? What the hell is that? I never signed any other crackers before. Does this mean you have to eat them?
I'll never eat them.
Mark Ruffalo's impersonation, let me say, he went to visit Inspector Toschi for 2 or 3 days in San Francisco. He came back as Inspector Toschi. He's got Toschi hair, he's got the gun.
Here, he wears his gun like bullet.
McQueen got that from Toschi.
And then the look is interesting also. I mean, you have quite a curious wardrobe.
Yeah, I got, some very flashy wardrobe. But none of it was outside of what Toschi was wearing at that time, you know. And some of Dave's stuff was even more sort of out there than what we did. I had the pleasure and honor of getting to spend time with this guy. He's incredibly humble and sincere and generous. to know him and know everything he's gone through, I'd definitely say he's an unsung tragic hero.
Toschi sat next to me watching the film, and I saw his eyes glisten. I said, Dave, that's how you're going to be remembered. This is a digital film. It's never going to degrade. 100 years from now, they're going to be seeing Mark Ruffalo as Dave Toschi.
And Robert as Paul?
Well, I took a friend of mine who was a stage actress, and she says, oh my God, it's Robert Downey Jr., right? And she said, how can I get to talk to him? I said, I know how, and I said rather loudly, I knew Paul Avery. Robert does practically a backflip, and he says, tell me more. And I said, well, first of all, Avery was very tall and slender and blonde.
Downey couldn't look less like Paul Avery. I mean, I look more like Paul Avery than Downey does. But Downey had the essence of what I thought Paul Avery was like. And he was very similar to a lot of the guys that were friends of my father's growing up who were journalists and were those kinds of guys who maybe drank a little too much, and they were characters.
Hey guys, Paul Avery. All right. Hey, can I take a ride with you guys?
Not a good idea, Paul.
You know, they were guys who, for the most part, lived on the sidelines of what was going on, but they had incredible, grandiose self-images and saw themselves as part of the story. And I thought Downey could capture that and be glib about it, and that also you could kind of see that he did care, he just didn't want to care.
Paul Avery's investigation has won him the accolade of a message from the Zodiac warning, you are doomed.
How much research did you do for this?
Not that much. But everyone else did it, so I kind of just rode luxuriantly on their wave.
Roberto, super flat. Give me a super droll reading of Annie's back.
Initially, because Ruffalo and Gyllenhaal had the person still living to really consult, but Paul Avery had passed away sometime before, I guess that kind of gave me license just to bring a little sense of freedom of interpretation.
It's done. It's written. Now I just got to type it.
I guess what I tried to do is just immerse myself in the busy work of journalism, and having that kind of job is maintenance and exertion and the details and the deadlines and the follow-up and the typing and rehashing and distributing of what you've done. It's a really tough gig, and I'm not saying I went out and busted my ass and, you know, got stories printed at LA Weekly or anything, but, you know, I did my part.
Hey, just one thing. Is it true they got a print off the cab?
Yeah, we got a partial in blood. But that is not for publication.
Hey, it's me.
This movie, it's like All the President's Men. It is a newspaper movie. And David Fincher's recreated those exciting times of deadlines and jangling phones and typewriters and teletypes. There was such attention to detail. I mean, Jake's using my real drawing board, my real pens, the recreation of the San Francisco Chronicle. You look up, and I don't even think it shows in the film, he's got the incredible lighting system. I'd forgotten it. Nobody in the world would know if it was right, but like they said, David Fincher would know. I guess this is the way he works.
I've been on this case since the day of its inception, September 27th, 1969.
We don't cooperate with writers.
Well, I'm not a writer, I'm a cartoonist.
And Dave Toschi sent you?
Yes.
Why?
Maybe he thought that I could do some good.
What are you, some kind of Boy Scout?
I was kind of thrilled when the producer contacted me and asked me to get the officers together that worked on the case. And I said, sure, I think I can. And when I talked to the producer in the beginning of this, I said, this isn't going to be some cheap movie you're going to throw together. And he says, no. He says, we're going to do the best we can to make it accurate. I says, well, if you'll promise me that, I'll get involved.
This will get knocked down.
I took him up to Lake Berryessa, showed him the crime scene, showed him what I thought took place at that time.
As they clear out of the way and Zodiac comes forward. Now, Hartnell said that he tried to get into the water, and that's when he raised the gun.
The Vallejo Police Department decided to open their files completely to the movie people. It was unprecedented, and we showed them everything. We held nothing back. I showed them stuff I had at my home that was reports that I had made. Everything is exactly as the way I investigated it and as I remember the original investigators handling it.
Do we want to bring this down to get a little more shot of this area?
It was important to me to meet with as many people as we could to kind of say, look, we want to recreate this as accurately as possible.
The grade of this whole thing has to be like it is over there. It's gonna get a little smoother on that side. You're gonna put trees on it, or it's gonna have this kind of dry brush that's not this one.
I'd picnicked at Lake Berryessa and stuff when I was a kid. Zodiac Island doesn't look like it did then. It's cut away a little bit more by the water. It's eroded. The trees are gone, and we had to reconstruct it.
This was where the tree used to be, and it's now gonna be right about here.
Okay, so the tree that the man is hiding behind is where?
Right there.
At tree number 3. Yeah. Okay.
I'm amazed at the authenticity of the movie. They've just gone overboard to make it as accurate as possible.
The contours of the lake had changed a bit because of the heavy rains a couple Januaries ago. And Captain Narlow, he's come out of retirement. He's going to show them where the murder site is. Now, I've been up there a lot of times, but it was sort of changed. So he says, yes, there's the murder site where the young couple was stabbed. There's a picnic table. There were 2 oaks here and so on. And Fincher looks at it, and he listens for the sound of the traffic on the bluff above. He looks at the line of sight. He feels the ground. He yells to see if his voice carries. Then he suddenly, without a word, goes around the inlet and comes out onto the peninsula. And he does the same thing, listening for sound, seeing what can be seen from the bluff and so on. He comes back and he says, the murder site is over there. And Narlow goes, my God, I took you to the wrong place. He had deduced this. And I thought, my God, that's an astonishing deduction. I've been there, the man who originally investigated this case, and within 5 minutes he'd figured that out.
Now, Zodiac had to, the way that he found them was he was driving up this road and he saw their car parked by the side. And so he got out of his car and he listened and he could hear them and he walked down and that's what kills him. Then he came back up and rode on the car door, got in his car, turned around and went down that way to Napa. And we telescope out and drop down and see the side of the... There, let's start like that.
Fincher has the kind of mind that would have made him an incredible criminologist. He simply doesn't stop asking questions. He says, I'm not making this film if I can't talk to that family member, if we can't find that document, if we can't go to this scene, if I can't have this and this and that. He has a very strict requirement to making a great film, and he's not going to do anything second-rate.
Cut it. Check that E. That E is not right. You gotta check it.
You know, we cut them and brought them here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even think they were real.
Yeah, they're real trees, and
Helicoptered in, right?
helicoptered them in.
I spoke with Brian Hartnell. I wanted to be able to kind of say, look, will you interface with us? And I'd like to send you drawings of how we understand it, and I'd like you to correct them. He said, fine. And so I started doing storyboards, and I was having all the storyboards drawn from the point of view of Brian Hartnell. He's on his back, he's looking up. He sees Cecilia, who's either in the crook of his arm or across his chest or his abdomen. She sees somebody off to his right. He turns, he stands up, and he looked at him and he called me back and he said, you know, I don't see it from my point of view. I see it as if I'm standing 10 feet away watching both of us. And I thought that was such an interesting thing that, in a weird way, maybe his disassociation from it is the saving grace, you know, because if you really had to confront the fact that somebody pre-cut lengths of cord, drove up and down this one little stretch of road, probably for hours, to try and find the right people, it would probably make you a little bit nuts that the world could serve up a left hook like that. And he couldn't be further from that.
You gotta get that gun a little lower.
I was dispatched to the scene along with my partner, Deputy Ray Land. We arrived at the scene to find Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell, the 2 victims, stabbed multiple times at Lake Berryessa.
Okay. A little bit too far to your left. Yeah.
I went to aid Cecilia Shepard. She was going into shock. She was talking very broken. I asked her to describe the Zodiac, and she said that she saw him before he put his mask on because he was within 45 to 50 feet away. And she gave a description of him being sloppy looking in his dress, overweight in appearance. Now, the importance of what she told me was that she left in the ambulance with Brian and she became unconscious in the ambulance, and later at the hospital, she did pass away. So she is the only person that ever saw the Zodiac face to face that could describe him before he put his hood on.
Boy lived, the girl didn't. Again, God, could you imagine surviving something like that? What the hell is he doing?
He's actually really astounding at this
I'm
stuff.
really good at inserts,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you something, they're gonna save my performance, so.
Yeah, it's the masters we have to throw out. We got all the inserts.
What made this case unique was that back in 1969, you know, now a lot of this stuff is commonplace and it's cliche. In those days, we really had the Boston Strangler, we had Jack the Ripper, who wrote the letters to the press, and this guy, Zodiac.
Reveal. Good, continue.
And in his letters, they're colorful, they're movie-based. His entire motivation is based on a movie. He had a turn of phrase, a way, the misspellings, the kind of writing, the ciphers that no one has ever been able to break, the predicting his own crimes, the electronic bombs he designed, his threats to kill children. He struck such a note of terror.
And sweet Christ on rubber crutches. Is that what he looks like?
I've never worked a case where a killer or anybody that committed a crime would write letters to the public. The people really became involved in this because they were scared. It really awoke a sleeping giant out there.
The brakes are great on that car.
Yeah. yeah.
That was for the lawyer.
Thank God he's a race car driver.
I knew that Melvin Belli had gone on Jim Dunbar's show. I remember the day.
Get him talking. Convince him to meet you somewhere.
Because I was 7 years old, it didn't seem as kind of ludicrous as it does in hindsight. That you go, what is a famous defense attorney doing on TV, placating a serial killer to drum up business?
You won't get hurt if you talk to me. You're not going to the guest chair. You want me to talk to the district attorney?
I'm going to kill them. I'm going to kill all those kids.
When he came out with the letter threatening the kids on the school bus, that really got the public scared. A lot of people wouldn't let their kids go to school. You know, we did everything in our power to protect hundreds and hundreds of school buses out there. We wanted to make the kids as safe as possible.
Pack your carrots and your celery peanut butter, okay?
Dad, you don't have to wait for me.
I know. You know what? You know what? I'm gonna drive with me, okay? Come on.
I shall wipe out a school bus some morning, shoot out the tires. San Francisco police displayed a couple.
I was riding the bus home. I was in second grade, and I became aware of the fact that we were being followed by California Highway Patrol cars. And I went to my father, who was a writer, saying, you know, Dad, Highway Patrol's been following our school buses. And he said, oh, yeah. Well, there's a serial killer, and he has threatened to take a high-powered rifle and shoot out the tires of a school bus and pick off the children as they come out. And I remember thinking, well, you could drive us to school, you know? Do we have to be in harm's way? And I joke about it, but there was a kind of turning point at that moment. I really did question whether or not my parents were capable of taking care of us, you know, at some level.
Your number one priority is the kids. You hear gunshots, get them down, lean on the horn, keep driving. Drive on your rims if you have to till you get to a well-populated area, and then duck and cover. Now, I know you didn't sign on for this, but we're doing the best that we can.
When you talk about something that's been as overly mythologized as Zodiac murders, by the time you actually go to Vallejo or you pull off the side of the road at Blue Rock Springs, you realize, as with all sort of tawdry affairs like this, it's very small. It's sort of sad. It's sort of pathetic. Because you see Blue Rock Springs is just a parking lot. You know, when you read about it, it seems so spooky, and you get there and it's just a parking lot where something bad happened.
And then he gets out and he comes forward.
This is the thing that astonished me the most. David Fincher sat down, first of all, and discussed the ethics of the case. And then he physically kept reenacting certain scenes.
And then in the wide shot, he begins firing.
And they became fantastic detectives. So I would be sitting at home. It would be 11, 12 at night. Jamie Vanderbilt or Brad Fisher, the producer, would call me, and they found new evidence. These guys, I think, did as much in finding new evidence and things to advance the case to a solution than the previous detectives.
Well, we should maybe, like, steel reinforce this.
I don't know if it solves the mystery. I think it's another step towards solving it. I do think it's going to reignite an interest. And I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't kick off a whole new round of investigation from the different police jurisdictions that were involved in the case.
We're playing catch-up, Jack.
One of the problems with the outset of this case was it was multiple jurisdictions. The departments didn't talk to each other that much. I think one of the biggest factors that would have helped solve this problem earlier would have probably been the advent of computers where you could run a person's name and be able to search things. That wasn't available, wasn't being able to be done.
I'm gonna need photos of those boot prints.
Sure, send me the handwriting.
I'll telefax it to you.
We don't have telefax yet.
Okay, I'll put it in the mail.
The killer made certain to strike on unincorporated areas and boundary lines, confused jurisdictions between counties where he would get the sheriff and all the newspaper men and the police department and the Vallejo sheriffs and to spread it and use them against each other. I mean, Fincher does not agree with me this, but I think this guy took enormous pains. I don't think it was particularly haphazard.
The shocking revelation on Zodiac was how tiny a case it was. Zodiac, by today's standards, was an underachiever. You know, I mean, he was not particularly smart. I think whenever you talk about the kind of aberrant behavior that Zodiac exhibited, you're not going to find an answer that's going to work for the rational mind. It can be as simple as, well, I just don't like girls with blue eyes, or it pisses me off that people make out in cars. I'm compelled to look at that stuff to, on some level, identify it. For whatever Son of Sam was doing at the height of the whole Son of Sam craziness, when you finally got to look at David Berkowitz, you could easily go to sleep after that, because you were like, he's a schlub. He's a nobody. He's of no consequence. And I think that's kind of ultimately the need. We want to find out who it is because he loses his fangs, he loses his aura, he loses his myth. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. You know, as soon as you meet the Wizard of Oz, you realize he's just this hot air balloon.
This is the Zodiac speaking. I'm back with you. I'm waiting for a good movie about me. Who will play me? I'm now in control of all things.
Got it, we're done.
Cut.
It's that great line from Wizard of Oz. Be gone, you have no power here. Leave before somebody drops a house on you.